When my brother signed the papers to move our father into the nursing home, he didn't cry. He didn't even look at him. He stood by the window of the administrator's office, speaking in that calm, businesslike tone that made people trust him. "It's for his own good," he said. "He needs professional care." The administrator nodded sympathetically. My brother was the kind of man who could make betrayal sound like kindness. I stood behind him, silent, watching. Our father sat in the hallway holding a paper cup of water, blinking slowly like someone who couldn't quite grasp what had just happened. The home was clean and quiet, all white walls and faint disinfectant. There was a hum of machines and soft television chatter in the common room. I hated it instantly. Dad had always been a man of motion, hands rough from carpentry, voice rougher from laughter and whiskey. Seeing him confined to a narrow bed under fluorescent light felt like watching a wild thing caged. When I asked my brother if he'd visit often, he smiled faintly. "I'll try," he said. "You know how work gets." He didn't try. The truth came out soon after. The house was sold. The accounts transferred. The paperwork had been prepared long before the decision to move Dad. By the time I found out, everything that had belonged to him, and to us, was in my brother's name. He had done it cleanly, efficiently, legally. That was his specialty. I could have fought. I could have shouted or sued or begged, but I didn't. Instead, I applied for a job at the nursing home. The night shifts were hard at first. The building slept under a dim, humming light, and the patients moved like ghosts. But in that stillness, I found something else. Time. Time to talk. Time to remember. Time to reclaim what my brother had erased. Dad didn't recognize me at first. Some nights he thought I was his sister. Other nights his nurse. But sometimes, when his eyes cleared and his voice steadied, he called me by name. "You came back," he said once, voice thin as paper. "I never left," I whispered. And in that moment, I decided what my revenge would be. Not fire, not fury, but presence. I would be the one who stayed. Every night, I moved quietly through the halls, checking on residents, whispering comfort to the restless, and sitting beside my father's bed. I read him his old letters. I played his favorite songs through a small speaker. I told him stories he had once told me. Each act of care was deliberate. Each moment, a quiet undoing of my brother's betrayal. Because while he measured his life in money and property, I was rebuilding something he could never own. Memory. One evening, I found Dad asleep, hand curled around an old photo of us in front of the house that was no longer ours. I tucked it under his blanket and sat beside him until dawn. That was the night I realized my brother had stolen everything but the one thing that mattered: time. And time, I decided, would become my weapon. Night at the nursing home has its own language. It speaks in the soft squeak of rubber soles on linoleum, in the hum of oxygen machines, in the faint rustle of bed sheets and whispered dreams. It's the hour when memory stirs. When the mind wanders to old fields, lost lovers, children long gone. That's when my father spoke the most. The first few nights, he drifted in and out of sleep, half trapped in dreams. But then the stories began to surface. He talked about the house, about the pine floorboards he laid himself, the lemon tree in the backyard, the porch swing he built for Mom before she got sick. He didn't remember that my brother had sold it. Or maybe, in some quiet place in his mind, he refused to. I didn't correct him. I let him live in the version of home that was still his. Each story became a thread I wove back together, one memory at a time. Sometimes, on my break, I'd stand outside in the smoking area and watch the lights of the city. I thought about my brother, his big house, his spotless kitchen, the framed degree on his wall. He'd built his life on signatures and silence, but the silence was breaking. When he called once, his voice was unusually cautious. "You really work there? At night?" "Yes," I said. "You don't have to," he muttered. "They take care of him." "Not like I do." He didn't reply. I could hear the unease in his breathing. That was the beginning of his discomfort, the slow, steady unraveling of his confidence. Every time he visited, which wasn't often, I made sure he saw me. In my uniform, with my badge, adjusting our father's blanket or cleaning the table by his bed, I greeted him politely. He's been calmer lately, I'd say. Sleeping better. He'd nod stiffly, pretending not to feel the judgment woven into my tone. And our father, his mind flickering like a candle, would sometimes take my hand and whisper, "You've been good to me," always when my brother was standing right there. One night, my father asked, "Why doesn't he stay?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. So instead, I began keeping a small journal, notes of every smile, every lucid word, every time he recognized me. I wasn't writing for myself. I was writing for the day my brother would try to tell his version of this story, because I knew he would. Men like him always need to own the ending, but I was already writing the truth. There's something sacred about the quiet hours. It's where you see people stripped of performance. No pretenses, no politics, no wealth. Just the body and the breath. I watched the residents fade one by one, their families visiting less and less until I was the only one left to hold their hands. In their silence, I found my resolve. Caring became my defiance. Patience became my rebellion. And love, the soft, invisible kind, became my weapon. When the nurses asked me why I stayed so long, I just smiled. "I like the night," I said. But what I meant was, the night is where justice lives. Because while my brother slept soundly in his stolen house, I was here, guarding what remained of the man who had built it. By late autumn, my father's mind was a series of dimly lit rooms. Some nights the light was on, and he knew me. Other nights, he spoke to ghosts, but I never stopped showing up. I had learned the rhythm of the home, the timing of the rounds, the flicker of hallway lights, the smell of antiseptic that settled into my hair. It had become a second world, one my brother would never understand. When the doctors called a family meeting about Dad's health, my brother showed up in a tailored suit, holding his phone like a shield. He spoke in polished phrases about care quality, about transitioning to hospice. I watched him talk, perfectly composed, and realized this wasn't guilt. It was maintenance. He was maintaining his image. When the doctor turned to me for input, I said simply, "He deserves comfort. And company. I can make sure of that." The doctor smiled. My brother hesitated, as if about to argue, but then just nodded. That was my small victory. He had no idea how deep my roots already were here. I became the unofficial keeper of the night shift. I learned the back doors, the old staff routines, the way the laundry smelled after midnight. The residents began calling me the one who stays. Every time my brother called, his voice had more tension in it. "You're spending too much time there," he said once. "You've got your own life to live." "This is my life," I told him. And it was. Because the more time I spent there, the more I understood the power of being present. He had taken everything that could be sold, but I was reclaiming what couldn't. Loyalty, memory, and story. One night, while sorting Dad's things, I found a small notebook in his drawer. His handwriting, shaky but clear, filled a few pages. She sits with me. She reads to me. She's like her mother. My breath caught. I didn't realize he still remembered Mom at all. The next page said, "He doesn't come much anymore. The boy who sold the house. But that's all right. She's here. That was all I needed. Proof. Not just of love, but of truth." I took a photo of those pages and saved them quietly. They weren't for revenge yet, but someday they would be. A few weeks later, the home held its annual family dinner. The residents and their families gathered in the common room, under yellow fairy lights and the smell of mashed potatoes. My brother came, of course, with that same tight smile. He brought flowers. He took pictures for social media. "Visiting Dad," he captioned. But Dad, frail and alert for once, looked up and said in front of everyone, "She's the one who takes care of me." The room went quiet. My brother froze, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw his mask slip. He looked like a boy again. A frightened boy caught in a lie. I didn't smile. I just held my father's hand. That was enough. After that night, my brother visited less, but he started calling more often, asking for updates, wanting to know how things were being handled. He was afraid, not of losing Dad, but of losing control. And slowly, he was. Every patient I cared for became another act of defiance. Every night spent beside my father's bed became a quiet rewriting of our family's history. My brother might have owned the deeds, but I was the one writing the story, and I knew, sooner or later, that story would outlive him. Winter came quietly that year. The snow fell over the nursing home like dust over a forgotten photograph. Inside, everything slowed. The clocks, the breaths, the heartbeat of the place itself. My father's health was fading. His voice had grown soft, like someone speaking from another room. But his eyes still searched for me when I entered. On my last week of night shifts, I brought a small radio and played the old songs he loved. Sometimes he hummed along, almost smiling. Other times he just listened, his hand resting over mine, warm and fragile. He didn't talk much anymore, but when he did, his words were sharp with clarity. "You were always the strong one," he whispered once. Don't let him forget that. He didn't need to say my brother's name. We both knew. When the call came, the one I had been expecting, I was the one sitting beside him. The night nurse had stepped out. The hallway was empty. It was just the two of us, the soft light, and the faint music still playing. His breathing slowed. He looked at me, really looked, and said, "Home." Then his hand went still. I sat there for a long time holding on to that silence. Not grief, not relief, something else. Something that felt like peace. My brother arrived the next morning wearing that same perfect suit. He hugged me briefly, eyes wet but calculating. Then he started talking about arrangements, logistics, paperwork. I just nodded. There was nothing left for him to manage, because I had already done everything that mattered. I had been there. Every night, every word, every breath, he had signed documents. I had carried a life. At the funeral, my brother spoke first. He delivered a neat, rehearsed eulogy about sacrifice, about family, about our dear father's legacy. People nodded politely. When it was my turn, I kept it short. "He taught me that love isn't measured by inheritance or power," I said. "It's measured by who stays when everyone else leaves." And I sat down. A few weeks later, the lawyer called. There was a small surprise, a handwritten letter found in my father's things. He had changed his will months earlier, quietly, simply. The old tools from his workshop, the photographs, the letters, all left to me. Not much in value, but everything that mattered. My brother didn't argue. He couldn't. Not after all the nights I'd spent proving what care actually meant. Now sometimes I still drive past the nursing home. The lights are soft, the windows glowing like stars. I imagine him there, still humming to the radio, still whispering stories into the dark. And I think about my brother, about how he'll spend his life surrounded by things he owns, but cannot love. While I, the one who stayed, keep what can never be sold. Presence, memory, peace. That was my inheritance. That was my revenge.